the book, essentially, imagine I spent a year going out with a guy named Tristan Harris, who'd been the design ethicist at Google. He is an expert in persuasive technology, and the two of us, and then with two other friends, we're just trying to start a national conversation. And once they started to engage, then the press started to engage. And that's when I realized I had to write a book, because it turns out there's something weird. Even though people don't read books, a book takes your story and makes it more legitimate. And so the whole goal with the book was to create an excuse to go on a 4-month book tour and meet tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
I'm not joking, you're laughing, but look, I'm really earnest, right? So I take everything you say very seriously. But it really was about, could I do a 4-month book tour, 7 days a week, between 5 and 9 events a day, to try to get the message out even more broadly.
Well, speaking of stories, just this weekend, 48 hours ago, Mark Zuckerberg wrote an op-ed, and he put out a proposal to regulate the internet in 4 key areas. He talked about data privacy, data portability, talked a little bit about harmful content, and he talked about the elections. Was what he put out, was that enough?
No, it's complete nonsense. The problem that Zuck has, by the way, I really applaud him for at least engaging in the conversation. Google's trying to pretend like none of this applies to them, which is laughable. I mean, Google invented all these problems, and they are by far the best at doing it. It's really insincere, because relative to election interference and to basically disinformation and hate speech, he's basically telling you, we give up, we can't solve this problem. We want the government to set standards so that our liability can be minimized and we're not really responsible for the damage we're doing. The real problem with privacy and data portability is he's essentially trying to frame this the way the Europeans framed the Global Data Protection Regulation, which is that we should only be concerned about the data that we contribute to these platforms. The real problem, and where all of the harm takes place, is related to metadata, which is the data about what you're doing. It's where you are, it's who you're with, it's the 100 things you did before, the 100 things you do after. The other thing that really matters is your browsing history. Their ability to surveil you wherever you go is really important. And then the last one, which in many ways is the most important, is that they're able to acquire, either through purchase or trading, massive amounts of very intimate personal data. They only need 2% of the data to make the product better. So they look to see, was there any signal in the other 98%? So what they discover is, yeah, there's a little bit of signal related to behavioral prediction. Unfortunately, they don't know who the people are or where they are. So they create Gmail. And this is where it gets really cynical. Because they realized, well, Gmail will give us identity, but hell, if we could read the documents, if we could read the emails, we'd know behavioral prediction. Because what do people do in email? They tell you what they're going to do. So they put ads in there, and they say, we're going to give you a free product, we're going to pay for it with ads, and to target the ads, we're going to have to scan your emails. They knew we'd never let the ads last, so they put that out as duck food. And when we protested, they said, oh, okay, we'll get rid of the ads. But they didn't stop scanning the emails. We're talking about an erosion of our civil liberties, of our ability to make our own choices without fear.
You brought up earlier the allegations last week about Facebook using the data for housing discrimination. I think...
Sorry, that's not an allegation. That is they've been convicted. Now they're just being litigated because not only were they caught, I mean, the product clearly does it. But they promised to fix it and then didn't.
How do you see these things in a political context as a right versus wrong issue versus a right versus left?
The cultural problem is that these guys all came up at a point in time when Silicon Valley's culture transitioned from the hippie libertarian model of Steve Jobs, which was really about empowering individuals. And anybody who worked in the personal computer industry is really familiar with that culture because it was really pervasive, to a form of libertarianism that was about building monopoly, about power dynamics where the consumer becomes the fuel, right? They're not even the product. And there's a data avatar for each and every one of us. And the whole goal is to build this high-resolution avatar and then use it to make behavioral predictions more valuable. They offer marketers perfect information, but in a Faustian bargain. because they undermine the value of brand. So if you're Procter & Gamble, relatively speaking, you're getting screwed. The other side of the coin, the consumer has only the information that Facebook and Google are willing to let them have. Capitalism depends on uncertainty on both sides. Otherwise, there's no need to negotiate. At small scale, it not only did no harm, it did a lot of great things. And it's a true tribute to how talented these people are, that they got to a couple billion active monthly users before any issues really showed up. Mm-hmm. Their code, their algorithms have wildly more influence on our lives than any democratically elected government or any law. You know, when Google says, I'm sorry, we're a global company, so the rules in the US don't apply, my response is, well, where's your army? Yeah. My point here is there's a cultural issue. These are not bad people, but they've been taught that they are exceptional, and therefore there are no rules that apply to them.
You know, what's more powerful, the laws of our country or the algorithms of these social media companies?
Today, these guys are more powerful. And so when we come, the question we're faced with is this one, I believe. One is that we've seen this movie before, and there are actually really basic ways to address what's wrong. And the second thing I believe firmly is that problems at this scale, the solution is always a much bigger business opportunity than the problem itself. Has anybody here seen that Google CAPTCHA where they say, are you a robot or a human? Identify the cars, the buses, the street signs. You know that thing I'm talking about?
Sure.
So you know what's really going on, right? They're not identifying if you're a human. You are training the artificial intelligence for Google's self-driving cars. Now, if you know my history, if you've read my book, I've had some neurological events in my life. Someday, my mouse movement is going to slow down and become shaky. It will be the first symptom of Parkinson's disease, right? What better way to get the first symptom of Parkinson's disease than watching mouse movement? And here's what's wrong. I'm not their customer. I'm not their product. I'm their fuel. They are under no legal obligation to tell me that I may have a symptom of Parkinson's disease, nor are they governed by HIPAA, so they don't have to protect my privacy. And all the economic incentives are for them to sell that information to the highest bidder, which will certainly be my insurance company, which will certainly raise my rates or cut off my insurance, and I still will not know that I have a symptom. So the most important thing for you guys to understand is, I believe there's a giant bull market coming. And the way you get to it is two ways. The first thing you do is that you go in and ask the following questions. Why is it legal that a company can offer email and online applications and then scan my most personal things for data that is valuable to them economically without me having either the knowledge of it or the benefit from it? I just don't think any corporation has the right to have that much impact. And I think the right way to fix it is to zero base the trading in third-party data and then have the negotiation about what's legitimate. Trying to do it from where we are now gets you to global data protection regulation, which is only on the 1% of the data that you contribute.
Mm-hmm. How do you think history will view the FANGs? Will one or a few?
I don't think you call them FANGs anymore because they're not all the same, okay? So I think it's going to look at Google and Facebook in one way. It's going to look at Amazon differently. Amazon increasingly looks like Google and Facebook because of their ad network and Alexa. So they're definitely getting into surveillance capitalism, as Shoshana Zuboff calls it. And Microsoft is there because it has LinkedIn, it has the search engine, it has email, and it's doing AI. But Apple's in a completely different world. I mean, Apple's not perfect, but if you have an Android phone today, I would just plead with you to study what's going on in your life with your Android phone. There's a really big difference between opportunity and execution. Apple obviously has an opportunity to do great harm also. And as long as they stay on the right side of that line, Apple and Netflix are A-okay by me. And I honestly believe that Mark Zuckerberg and Larry and Sergey are one good night's sleep away from the epiphany necessary to get this right. And the epiphany is really simple. It's realizing that they've succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, and that no matter what they do, They can't do 1% as much good with a foundation as they can by fixing the companies they created.
You have a lot of investors in the room, and there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the room as well. You were a legendary investor. What's the next big thing?
So I think the core thing is to recognize that tech has a natural pendular movement from centralization to decentralization. And Google and Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft have nailed the pendulum to centralization. And Google and Facebook and Amazon in particular have choked off almost all startup activity anywhere near them, so you can't really get anything going. I mean, a great example is look in AI. Right? The big four have hired like 80% of all the people who have an AI degree in America, and they pay them these really high salaries. So you can hardly do a startup today because the cost of getting an AI person is too high. It's really dangerous. And they say, oh, you can't regulate us because we're competing against China. And I'm going, wait a minute. You guys are competing against China in behavioral manipulation. This is America. Why do we want to be in behavioral manipulation? We want AI to diagnose diseases. We want AI to make the world better, to teach kids stuff, right? I want to see distributed identity. I want to see distributed everything. Look at the Apple model and take it to the next degree. How about if, when you log on to something, they come to you and ask permission for data, and you have a terms of service, and you go, basically, middle finger unless you give me something really valuable. You want companies who negotiate on your behalf. That's a really valuable thing today. I look at this and I just go, it's literally everywhere. You can do every single thing that's going on the internet today and 100,000 things more just by reversing the polarity and recognizing that the human being at the far end of this is your customer, not your fuel. I'm very comfortable that Congress can regulate this because they regulate healthcare, banking, and defense, which are demonstrably more complicated. There's a lot of reasons for hope. And, this was enough for me to stop doing everything I was doing and do it full time. And, hopefully one or more of you will decide you want to get engaged too. And I want to just invite you to join.